Cover across your three quarters.
Didn't really get much of a chance
No, he sort of...
at Hull.
Great things were talked about, and then people like Cam Scott seemed to overtake him in the pecking order, and then obviously we had people like Maludi and Rosethorn come in, and he just never really got a look in, to be honest.
And now you've got, I mean, all the signings, the outside backs that you made ahead of this season as well.
Yeah,
So,
and Buchanan's overtaken him in the pecking order as well, so...
So,
yeah.
I mean, he's going to be, I guess, given a chance in the reserves at Castleford and see if he can impress for them. Ian Watson has received a nominal fine for his comments criticising the performance of a match official. The Salford head coach was deemed to have breached the RFL's respect policy, but has avoided more severe sanctions due to his previous track record, the RFL have said. In a statement, they said, there has been constructive dialogue between Watson and the Rugby Football League's match officials department since the incident, with all parties looking forward to continuing a positive relationship. A Salford statement read, following the immediate post-match comments made by our head coach Ian Watson, we have been able to reflect and evaluate, including consultation with the RFL match officials department around some of our concerns. We recognise that some of our opinions were made in the heat of the moment and accept they breached the RFL's enjoy the game policy, which we fully support. We look forward to continuing a positive relationship with the RFL match officials department throughout 2020 and beyond. It sounds like there's been a slap on the wrist, and maybe part of the point of why Watson got was so clear in his directing his comments has at least been successful in that he's been able to open a dialogue up with the match officials department, which he was kind of claiming hadn't been put in place for him when he tried to before. So maybe he's achieved his objective a little bit, and I
was going to say, I wonder whether the match officials department has actually admitted that there was fault on their part, hence why it's a nominal fine. And
yes, maybe his track record is he hasn't moaned about this before and probably had cause to.
Yeah, they went back and reviewed call logs and saw that he had actually made 84 calls to them which hadn't been answered or something.
I think that's a good potential observation there on that one. I hadn't even thought of that. Definitely, there's something in that, isn't there? It
just sounds like
aim.
Both teams are both parties are sort of admitting a little bit of fault. It feels like.
Yeah, and it's good that there's going to be sort of a positive working relationship as a result of what we don't condone as a good way to bring that about.
No, but I suppose in his defence, if he feels like he has gone through the proper channels repeatedly and got nowhere, I guess you are left thinking, well, what am I meant to do now?
Yeah, exactly. And whilst we would have hoped the proper channels would have worked better, it seems like they've opened that up now. So hopefully Ian Watson's frustrations will be directed more at his own team now, and the match officials department will listen to the valid back and forth that sometimes needs to exist between clubs and the RFL.
Yeah. London Broncos have completed the signing of Salford Red Devils winger Ed Chamberlain on a 4-week loan.
Bradford Bulls have signed hooker Danny Maskill following a successful trial period.
And York have signed Huddersfield hooker Reece Butterworth on a 1-month loan.
More York news that we were hoping not to have to discuss, but it's happened. There's further delays to the Community Stadium in York, and it's forced the Super League and Championship double header that takes place on March the 22nd to be moved across the city to Bootham Crescent. So the clubs have said support from the clubs and Sky Sports has meant they can switch the event. It was initially scheduled to be at the Community Stadium when that was first announced in November last year, and it was supposed to obviously feature a fixture between Toronto and Wakefield in the Super League, which will come after a double header on Mothering Sunday. I'm away on a stag do. I need to speak to my mum to flag that that's going to be the case, so she shouldn't get too upset. Double header with the Knights also playing against Featherstone the same day. So obviously those four clubs and the broadcast partners and stuff have managed to organise that being now back at Bootham Crescent, which is unfortunate because it would have been great to showcase the new stadium in front of a TV audience, but not to be for York. It's a bit of a shame.
No, I suspect recent weather has maybe had an impact as well on delays.
they'll certainly be saying that when they have to hand over late and pay the fines or what that would involve.
Halifax have completed the signing of experienced playmaker Tommy Lee. The 32-year-old has come out of retirement to join the Championship club as Simon Griggs bolsters his squad following the sudden retirement of Keil Carlisle.
Yeah, a hooker who suddenly retired last year has come out of retirement to replace a hooker who suddenly retired this year.
Yeah.
Good luck to Tommy Lee, though, in the Championship. I'm sure
that must be like the 79th team he's played for.
I'm sure he can cope at that level. What do you think?
Yeah.
News that we were all sort of expecting, but has been confirmed in typical Eric Perez style. The Canadian Rugby League side Ottawa Aces will join League One in 2021 after taking on the Hemel Stags licence. The new club will play home matches at Ottawa's TD Place Stadium, which looks quite swanky for a League One stadium, but they will base their pre-season camp in England, I guess, because of the weather. No, there's no new coach yet appointed, but apparently that appointment is imminent in the next 5 or 6 weeks. And they can't sign any new players for next year until June onwards. That's part of the operational rules of the Rugby Football League. So they'll then be working to get a team together to play in League One. I'm just seeing if there's any other sort of notes to mention on this. Nothing too newsworthy, I don't think, came out of the press conference. They're sort of talking a good talk about bringing through Canadian players and developing an academy in the sort of medium to long term. Although Perez has called for patience around that sort of thing, it sounds very much like what we heard from Perez 4 years ago. I don't know, 4.5 years ago. I don't know what you think on that, Sarah. But what do you make of another transatlantic team during the league structure?
Well, totally disagree with it. I think it's completely wrong and shouldn't be allowed.
I mean, that's consistent with your sort of takes on expansion before, so I don't suppose I was expecting anything different, if I'm honest with you, Sarah. I have concerns over the Ottawa project too. I kind of guess because they bought a license to have a club, the RFL were backed into a position where they had to try and find a way to make this work, given that a license had been purchased already. But the name Ottawa Aces, I don't know if they explained at the press conference where the name came from. I kind of thought the Ottawa Stags worked quite well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Obviously, a sort of sideline to this is that the RFL are in conversations with New York Rugby League about them joining the Challenge Cup from the first round next year. They'll, of course, need to raise a team for that as well. It's an interesting development. I understand they were sort of lean on the idea of who's supporting this in terms of financially. They've unveiled a sort of shirt that doesn't look real, that doesn't have any sponsors or anything like that associated with it. As you know, Sarah, I'm generally positive on expansion. I want to see a bit more substance. And the reason why I want to see a bit more substance is because I don't trust Perez.
No.
Ultimately, anyone who's been involved with Bradford Bulls during the last 15 years pretty much can't be trusted. It's my view. It's my take on it. But there you go.
Yeah, no. I mean, set up your own league with your own foreign clubs.
It would be wonderful if Ottawa can bring a genuine Canadian feel to the side quicker than maybe the Wolfpack, who are aiming for winning trophies at the top, and Ottawa aren't quite the same in that regard. So that would be a positive thing for I suppose expansion. And I think the big winners are Toronto, because this is like potentially a feeder club for them, a testing ground for players that they can then pick up, potentially, without having to set up their own academy maybe. I don't know. So it seems like Toronto could be the big winners here if they can get their own shit together. I hope that expansion in Canada works, just as I hope that the domestic scene in North America continues to grow. But anyone else who has any strong views either way on the Ottawa Aces, send them in to us, and we'll have a conversation about it next week's show, because we haven't really had too much time to canvas fan views, have we, on this one, Sarah? And we like to get a range of views.
Yeah, I mean, I can quote Rob, but
yeah, Fat Boy Rob quoted us saying it's bollocks. Yeah, actually, he went and supported Toronto last week, so I think he's swinging around.
Come on,
Sarah.
Rob, get yourself sorted. No consistency.
Fair enough. Talking about potentially no consistency. Ooh, controversial way of introducing this. And finally, Sarah.
Yes, sorry, I had moved on. So yes, and finally, there was an article written by a referee's wife to do with the amount of abuse her husband was subjected to during a match, and in front of her and in front of the children.
Yeah,
and
a bit of context. I think this was on a Total Rugby League forum. I think it first got posted on, didn't it, by the lady, and she mentioned the sort of level of abuse that her other half was receiving during the game on Friday night. I believe the game was played, and it was there was.
Yeah. Sorry, I was getting confused because there was some talk that it was at the whole match, but yes, that was Friday night.
So there was homophobic abuse, allegations of paedophilia, but most generally just allegations of being sort of corrupt and cheating within the comments aimed at this particular referee. We're not sure which one, but yeah, sorry, Tom Andrews got in touch, didn't he?
Yeah, and he said, "What a shame to read this, although it comes as no surprise. You hear it every week. I believe as fans we're entitled to criticise when the calls aren't going your way, but personal abuse is unneeded and vile. No ref, no game."
I think that's the view we always put forward, isn't it, really, as from Super League Pod generally, isn't it, that totally as fans you're entitled to get on the back of a referee to try and encourage him to blow the whistle more in favour of your team than the opposition team, but, shouting get them on side or come on ref is holding on or something is different to then accusing the referee of some sort of bias or taking it further than that and being genuinely personal in the abuse that you direct towards the referee.
And to be honest, I could quite imagine it could have been related to James Child, because the amount of abuse he got from the Wakefield fans was ridiculous.
The other matches on Friday were Robert Hicks refereeing at Warrington and
Gareth Hewer
at St Helens. But it isn't really important, is it, necessarily which referee it was aimed at? It's more.
But my thing was, I was actually quite shocked by the amount of abuse Child got, because, to be honest, he was largely invisible for the match, and not in a bad way. He just he didn't ever pull anyone back for offside, but then he didn't pull either team back for offside. To be honest, first half he seemed to give us mainly penalties, second half Wakefield, but nothing horrendous, and I don't think he missed anything much. So you've got to say, are people actually watching a balanced game? I mean, Joshua did point out he thinks Wakefield fans may have problems with anger management, but yeah, it just the level of abuse and the amount of people yelling it, and it did feel unpleasant. So if it was related to him, then I can totally see I wouldn't want my child hearing my husband abused in that way. And
I mean, at Wigan on Sunday, there was quite genuinely some strange decisions made throughout the game from one of the younger referees that's sort of trying to make his mark in Super League, and no suggestion that those decisions affected the result. The only ones maybe are the suspension ones we'll talk about later on, but the sin bin thing that the RFL are putting out kind of suggests that it's hard for referees to pick up on some of these more technical infringements whilst the game's going on, even though they're bad tackles. But yeah, some strange decisions, but I didn't feel like at any point the referee was getting hounded to such an extent that it became personal. But it is it is creeping in at most fixtures you attend during the game, and walking away from the game as well. The amount of people who seem to be talking about the referee more than the players' performances is very disappointing. I've had people directly say to me, the way that Rugby League fans seem to direct all their attention towards match officials is a reason why they've started staying away from Rugby League games. So